All right. Really late show with Chris and Craig. The the mobile technology impaired show because I'm mobile. My internet's not working. We recorded a little bit and it kind of abruptly cut off. So
Yeah.
I'll use my editing magic to make it sound good. But you get bonus Chris and Craig, I guess. Maybe that's the bonus of it all. I wanted to throw a couple of quick things by you, Craig, in the time we got left.
Yeah.
You were telling me baseball started. And honestly, Craig, this probably will let us know where we're at with baseball because I'm like, what? Baseball starts this week? And that's not good, Craig.
Yeah. Well, technically, it started last week. The Dodgers and Cubs opened up a 2-game series in Japan. But this Thursday, this week is the official kickoff to Major League Baseball. Lots of excitement for people that like baseball like myself, although I know that there are plenty of people that don't care for baseball and don't care for opening day or care for the 162-game marathon that is Major League Baseball. So I totally get that, but I am excited. Obviously, this is a weird sport now because the Los Angeles Dodgers have spent stupid money along with the New York Mets, but the Dodgers just seem to spend stupid money every offseason getting everybody they want, and it's really become a sport of the have and have-nots, and unfortunately, I like the have-nots Miami Marlins.
Yeah, definitely. The struggle I'm having here in Columbus, Ohio, is we're halfway in between the Guardians and the Reds, so the allegiance is kind of split between the two teams. Here's the issue that I'm seeing the Guardians have: they're a playoff team. Was it how far did the Guardians get? Did they play the Yankees in the championship series? No, it was round before, right?
I believe it was the division series.
Yeah, and the Yankees are in a different stratosphere in terms of money. And we did a podcast back then, kind of felt like the Guardians were always David, and the Yankees were Goliath. And yeah, there was one famous example of David being Goliath, but usually Goliath wins and everything. So it's kind of a bummer for if we're in areas of low-paying franchises. And, if you like the Marlins, you're in that boat for the most part. For the most part, the Guardians are and the Reds are. And I don't know, that's what kind of makes it tough a little bit. My other hard thing is, and I think it's because the Guardians don't spend that much money, they use a lot of guys who can play multiple positions. And I'll tell you, Craig, I'm looking at Guardians articles over the spring because, the podcast to do with Mike Brown, he likes talking baseball.
Yeah.
Craig, I can't tell you who the starters are in each position because they change around so much. Yeah. And maybe it's because we support teams that don't like to spend money, so guys come and go. And I don't know. Help me identify with these teams. Help me come up with players I can put my hands around and everything. And again, it doesn't have to be even the Albert Bells or the Manny Ramirez's or the iconic names. Give me some guys from the Guardians that we can stick with. And I know there's probably a better fan of the Guardians out there that it's like, you dummy, and they'll name 15 Guardians. But for most of us, we can't name them, and that's the problem.
Yeah, I did look. They actually did make it to the American League Championship Series against the Yankees, so that was the ALCS. So they were one step away from a World Series appearance. And look, this is an interesting team. The Guardians are interesting because they always seem to be competitive, even though they probably have no business being competitive because they have a lack of payroll, but yet somehow they kind of find a way. So, kudos to Cleveland for sticking in there and losing big name players. They've signed Jose Ramirez, of course, to a longer term contract, but this is a team that kind of piecemeals a team together and they find a way to compete. And I would think that this year should be no different for Cleveland, but it's weird because, even though in Tennessee, baseball is really, really popular, we don't have a major league franchise. Now we have the Nashville Sounds, the AAA minor league affiliate for the Milwaukee Brewers. So, there is a little bit of excitement there. They have a nice stadium downtown. It's got a great skyline look. But it's always kind of interesting, baseball is big in the South. I mean, they have high school stadiums that have, they're nice stadiums. They have lights and they play up until like 10 o'clock at night, even in even younger divisions. So baseball is pretty big here, but yet no major league franchise. I know they're trying to build that here with the Nashville Stars. They would like to bring to Major League Baseball in the Nashville market. But it's just kind of interesting how baseball is probably more popular here than it is in Ohio, but yet they have two major league clubs in Ohio, nothing here in Nashville or in Tennessee. And, maybe that'll change. But Major League Baseball is not really talked about that much down here because of it. So yeah, we have the Braves and the Reds kind of in between where we are, but no one really talks about Major League Baseball on our sports talk radio programming.
Who's the Sounds affiliated with?
They're the Milwaukee Brewers AAA franchise. So, they've actually had some pretty good players. I mean, my wife and I, not last year, but the year before, watched them play the Miami Marlins AAA team, Jacksonville, and got to see the really great young prospect, Jackson Churio, who now is a star in Major League Baseball for the Brewers. Got to see him play. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, in Milwaukee's been pretty competitive, like Cleveland as well, a smaller market team that continues to build a pretty quality team year in and year out. So it's I mean, the Sounds are popular here. They're well liked and they get good crowds, and that's why a lot of people think that a Nashville pro baseball team would do well here. But kind of interesting though, obviously the Titans are getting their new stadium, and that's a point of contention for a lot of people because of how much public funding is being spent on it. So it'll be interesting to see if the Nashville Stars baseball team can get off the ground and actually get a physical location.
Yeah, Columbus is the Columbus Clippers, and they've been affiliated with the old Expos for a while, and the Nationals when they moved, Yankees for a long time. Now they're with the Guardians. It's kind of funny. Well, not haha, but kind of interesting. Just with the media being the way it is, and again, we just don't have media. I'm not blaming the media. We just don't have as many media members as we did before. The Clippers have a hard time getting that day-to-day coverage.
Right.
For the Columbus Dispatch, they'll run a brief from the games. And I know from talking to people in the Clippers like, hey, give us more coverage. But is there a lot of overall interest in day-to-day? It's hard, man, to be honest with you. And I don't even and you probably know Steve a little bit better than I do with the Akron Beacon Journal. There was some. Did they even cover all the Indians games or Guardians games now?
Yeah, I mean that's the real issue, I think, with sports in general now. There's a lot of sentiment, I think, out there where do you need to cover teams on the road? Do you need to go out on the road trips and cover that day to day? I think there's an argument for and against it. I can understand why you might not send your beat reporters to every game. I do get that, or every road trip. But I think there is something to be said, and I think a lot of the sports reporters that you talk to would probably have the sentiment of we want to cover the team, but we want to do it live and in person because that's how you build rapport, and that's how you really get the finger on that pulse of that team itself. So, and I definitely get it. There's not a ton of coverage on the Nashville Sounds day to day. Very little, to be honest, overall. And I think it's, the numbers bear out that, people aren't really like clamoring for day-to-day coverage of that because, again, this is the Milwaukee Brewers AAA affiliate. Now, if it was the Atlanta Braves affiliate or maybe the Cincinnati Reds affiliate, because we're kind of halfway between both of those franchises, maybe St. Louis because we're kind of close-ish to St. Louis, where you might have a fan base. I think there would be maybe a little bit more interest, but I don't know that it really matters, if you're a minor league affiliate. Now, Cleveland has a great situation with Columbus, so you would think there'd maybe be a little bit more interest in Columbus because, of course, Columbus is in Ohio, not too far away. So, Maybe, but yeah, down in Nashville, I think that the fan base is good. It's a strong fan base. Like we went to a game and it was a great crowd, and they're usually among the best crowd. They have usually the best attendance, or at least among the best attendance in the country. Every year for minor league baseball, but I think minor league baseball coverage is going to go by the wayside, and even pro sports. I mean, there's a lot of pro sports that don't get covered because the numbers might just not bear it out.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about the Clippers too, and I think every baseball team is a little bit different. The Clippers, if you have a hot young rookie prospect, sometimes like you'll go up to Akron, Double A, and you get to call up there too. Where Triple A tends to be more of, hey, you're a vet and you're good.
Yeah, you're hanging on. You're just kind of building up some time, and yeah, and that's sometimes that can be a little fun. I mean, where you can see some players that might have fizzled out at one point or another that make their way down to AAA, or guys that are trying to get back to the big leagues, which is kind of an interesting story usually as well. I'd almost think from a coverage perspective of minor league baseball, it'd be fun to do like slice of life kind of coverage, not necessarily game coverage, because I think the game coverage is just kind of like, if I wanted to, I can go on the website and see if the Nashville Sounds won yesterday. But it would be interesting if you could do a day in the life of a ball player, a minor league ball player, or maybe a month in the life of a minor league ball player. We always hear stories about how they're underpaid and stuff like that. So I think stories like that would be kind of interesting. Maybe something that you can do with the Columbus Clippers, where you kind of follow around an aging veteran, or a young prospect that might be making his way up there, or people that are either new to the team, or people that have been on the team for 10 years or whatever, and you're trying to like see how they live their lives as a minor league ball player, and do they have like 6 roommates in an apartment during the season, and how do they live, and how do they kind of survive on that small salary that minor leaguers usually make.
Yeah, and I think some places are already kind of starting to do that and have that mindset where I even know, man, I was younger in the field. We had a Canton Crocodiles. I was covering stuff in Canton, Ohio, and the Canton Crocodiles were like an independent minor league team. They weren't even affiliated with anybody. And the way the Canton Depository did it was pretty smart. Was you'd send guys to your local games, but instead of saying, "Hey, break down the game," it was just more of, "Let's do a feature on everybody," and they put a little box in there saying, "Hey, the team won. This guy blah, blah, blah." And that was about it. So yeah, that's probably the way of doing it. Let's do this. We got a few minutes left. NFL draft's a big deal, and we talk sports here a little bit. We can talk sports more. I don't mind at all.
Yeah.
But on a couple other podcasts, a lot of people are really clamoring about Browns content and Titans content. Well, not Titans necessarily, but Steelers content. The Titans, where you live, have the #1 pick.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, it's interesting. Here's my take, and tell me what you're hearing. You don't hear much about Cam Ward. I think Shedeur Sanders is more of that sexy pick. He's Deion's son. There's a little bit more PR about him, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that you're not hearing anything or as much about Cam Ward is kind of telling me that some people in the know are like, wow, I think the Titans are going to pick Cam Ward. But I know I could be wrong. This is just my take. I'm not an insider. I'm not talking to teams every day. I just realize this crap. And the more I read, I see Shedeur get broken down, and I don't see Cam as much. And that kind of makes me think, hey, Cam's the best. We'll probably see Cam with the Titans.
Yeah, I think it's trending that way. I mean, the all of the fervor down here was what was the quarterback situation going to look like for the Titans when free agency started. I know there were a lot of sports talk people down here beating the table for Sam Darnold. That didn't happen. They were beating the table for like a Daniel Jones if you didn't want to draft a quarterback. But They signed Brandon Allen, who does have ties to Brian Callahan, but that does not matter because Brandon Allen is a backup quarterback. This points to it's got to be a rookie quarterback, right? Unless they decide to 180 here and sign Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, it just looks like it's screaming they're going with the youth movement. And I think it's a good idea, although I will say that this might not be the draft for it, but you can't assume that any of the quarterbacks are going to be better next year. You can hope they would be, because there might be more people to choose from, including Arch Manning, who would have some royalty in this market. But I think that the Titans are going to go for the upside pick and hope that they hit on Cam Ward. And if they do, then they might set their franchise up for the next 10, 15 years. If they misfire on him, they might set their franchise back for the next 5 or 10 years. So it's a risk reward that they're willing to take, I think, because of what they've done in the offseason. They've bolstered the offensive line. They don't really have much at the receiving help right now, but they've at least decided to bolster the offensive line to probably help Cam Ward. And I think that that's probably the direction they're going at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype about next year's quarterback class. And again, I'm not a huge college football insider, so there's probably a lot of other quarterbacks that are of interest, but you hear a lot more about the Arch Mannings, the Drew Allers from Penn State, people like that. I'm sure there's other guys out there that will come up, but here's the problem. If you wait for next year, if you really want Arch Manning, you better be the worst team in the league. I know the Titans had the worst record, but sometimes that doesn't always happen. And do you really want to subject your team to another year of losing a lot of games? Probably not.
Yeah.
So sometimes you have to just jump for what you have. It's interesting. I was actually hearing from some people down in Tennessee that Will Levis could be on the trade market. And when I'm hearing that, you lose Mason Rudolph. And Mason Rudolph is a journeyman backup. I get that.
Right.
But, when you're thinking also about trading Will Levis, that's another sign to me saying, hey, unless there's a veteran quarterback out there, and I don't see a veteran quarterback that's going to come in Tennessee right now. It seems to really trend toward a quarterback at number one.
Yeah.
And, Will Levis, if you can get a mid to late round pick, I'd say go for it. And honestly, if I'm another team out there that you want a reclamation project, I'd trade a mid to late round draft pick for Will Levis. No guarantees it's going to be anything, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's cheap for the next couple of years. It just doesn't make sense for him to be on the Titans roster if they draft Cam Ward. So, at this point, you go Cam Ward, you go Brandon Allen, and then you go a couple of training camp bodies, rookie training camp bodies. I don't know what you get. I don't know what the value is for Will Levis. He's cheap. He's shown flashes of intrigue, but he's also shown flashes of fizzling out because he turns the ball over too much. But I think if you're a team with an established veteran quarterback, I don't think he'd be a bad option to be a learn behind kind of guy where there's no pressure of him having to start, like places like Buffalo or Los Angeles Chargers, for instance, where you kind of know. Or even I would even argue the LA Rams could be a fit. Matthew Stafford came into the league as a gunslinger type, and maybe he could impart some wisdom to Will Levis on how to take care of the football better, because the skill set is there. I mean, the guy threw 4 touchdown passes in his first start ever. He regressed last year. I don't know if it was a Brian Callahan situation or if it was just a regression of talent, and maybe he just isn't what he is, isn't a starting quarterback in the league. But teams that have established quarterbacks, I could see taking a chance. Maybe you give up a 5th or maybe a conditional pick where it's a 6th that turns into a 5th based on, something. But I just don't see a lot of reason to keep him in Tennessee anymore if you're going to draft Cam Ward or a quarterback in the first round. I just don't see there's too much like, well, Levis was the starter. Could he still start? So you kind of want to get rid of all that. You've got Brandon Allen, who everybody knows is a backup quarterback. You don't have to worry about whether or not he's going to take the rookie's job or anything like that. He's just going to be a veteran presence for that guy, for that kid. So it just makes more sense to get rid of Levis.
Yeah, real quickly, when you look at the Browns and the Steelers, here's my issue, with the possible exception of Sam Darnold. But Darnold had a rough last couple of games of the year. He had a great first part of the year.
Yeah.
Every quarterback out there, Aaron Rodgers included, has question marks. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is getting older. Yeah. He ended up the year with a pretty decent year stat-wise for the Jets. But he's 41. And, when you hit the wall, you hit the wall. Could he hit the wall this year? Very possible. Who knows,
Yeah.
And I think that's the issue. You've got a bunch of guys that are really – there's question marks. There's no one major guy that could do it. Even from what I heard with Cam Ward, and again, take nothing away from Cam Ward. Cam Ward could be amazing. But they're saying that Cam Ward's probably not your Jaden Daniels either.
No, I don't think he is. I don't think he's Drake May. I don't think he's much of those, but he does have enough arm talent to make you hope that he can make something of himself. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of question marks with quarterbacks right now. And I think for the Steelers, they seem to be in this situation every year where it's like, well, they can't really go all in on a young quarterback because that would mean a rebuild, or that would mean finding a way to get up into the top 5 of the draft to get a quarterback. And obviously the Steelers have not done that in quite some time. And I just think the Steelers are, they continue to kind of chug along as being a good team, but not a team that can make waves in the playoffs. I just think that's a problem for them, where they need to kind of decide, is it okay to have a year where we're not quite that great, and then maybe get the quarterback of the future, a la Ben Roethlisberger, to where now for the next 10, 15 years, you have a quarterback that can get you past the first round of the playoffs? Or do you want to keep churning out the journeymans or quarterbacks that have too many, issues, or are they too old? Are they just regressing in talent? I think the Steelers need to kind of make a play and say, we're going to have a lean year or two, and then we're going to hope that that's going to parlay us into a franchise quarterback, not a 41-year-old quarterback, or not a Russell Wilson who more or less is a game manager. And, I think that that's what they need to think about in Pittsburgh, because they can go 10-7 every year, but it just doesn't seem to be getting them to where they want to get to, which is a Super Bowl.
Well, you're exactly right for your assessment. The issue is the Steelers are in a point where they're like, hey, we're going to just put our best foot forward each year. And I don't think they're thinking Aaron Rodgers is going to get them the Super Bowl, but I think they're like, okay, who can we bring in that's going to win this the most games? And they're like, okay, Aaron Rodgers will probably win some most games. But you're right, it doesn't help for the future, and that's where the Steelers fall short. All right. Well, Craig, as always, it's been great. Hate technology, but I always like talking to you. Let's you've got a good article about spring TV shows. Let's get to that next week, and let's hope and pray for better internet connections.
Yes.
We'll have to struggle like we did today. All right. Yeah, so let me let you go, Craig. Call me on this other issue that we were talking about, with our other meeting. But for Craig, this is Chris. Thanks for checking us out. I got to take off. Have a great one, Craig. We'll talk soon.
See ya.